This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hey, Prime members! Are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
This is the CRM Archaeology Podcast. It's the show where we pull back the veil of cultural resources management archaeology and discuss the issues that everyone is concerned about. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 314. And we are, we're recording. It's the 4th of July holiday, and it went way too quickly for me. I don't know. How about you, Andrew and Doug?
It was so fast that I still don't even realize. Oh, that's right. It was 4th of July. What? 4th of July for me is classically the symbol of, wow, summer's almost over. It's crazy because it's like the high point, and then it goes downhill from there. Yeah.
That's true. And Doug, I know you're in Scotland, so you don't really have to have the day off or any of that. But do you celebrate? Since you're American, do you do anything for 4th of July yourself?
Yeah, so we'll have like American friends, and also like weirdly there's a North American connection because Canadians have like their Independence Day on the 1st. So you see like Canadian Day, and so sometimes we'll do a joint like Independence North American Day sometime in the week, because we don't get it off. Usually it's celebrated on the weekends. Mm-hmm. We'll either do it the weekend before or the weekend after. But yeah, I still observe my freedom from kings that we have over here. At some point I might have to swear allegiance to, but that's just a personal hurt inside my heart that I'll have to deal with when that time comes.
When you have St. Patrick's Day and we have like Irish pubs that do in Scotland, is there anything like that where there's like American restaurants or bars that do some kind of an American celebration?
Yeah, but it's not food you'd ever want to like. So probably the biggest thing is there's like American candy stores. So that's a big thing. Big as in relative, like there's not really a lot of American restaurants, but things like Tex-Mex, a lot of those sort of Chipotle style, fast casual burrito things have made it over here. So I'd call that American, not like themed. There's occasionally a themed restaurant, but you get more often than not, you're going to see like an American candy store than anything else. Yeah, because candy's different in America versus you get that a bit more. And like some pubs will do like non-American pubs will do like a celebration or something like that. And you have groups over here and yeah, but it's not quite the level of a St. Patrick's Day or anything like that. Okay,
cool. Someday maybe I'll spend a summer in Scotland and get to experience that. Okay, on to the subject. Today, Doug brought up a good topic, I thought. It's one of those topics you think, how long can we talk about it? And then we spend a whole podcast on it. Doug, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, today we're going to talk about references, and not like your term paper references, but as in like, and so this comes from the last couple of months over in the UK, Federation of Archaeological Managers and Employers. We had gotten in a request on what's the legal advice around giving references and what should you do. And so we sent something out, but I think it would be good because it is something, if you at any point in your career, you're going to have to request references, you're going to have to get references. If you're hiring, you're going to more likely than not have to request, because that's probably going to be like a company policy. Or if you're like a supervisor, or crew chief, or a project manager, or PI or something, at some point someone's going to request a reference of you. So I'd say it's fairly important. Probably not like super often an occurrence, but something happens often enough that I think we should talk about it. And I'm sure Heather, Andrew, you guys, I'm guessing Andrew, you probably get this a lot just from students for their first job actually requesting you write letters of rec and things like that. Right, Andrew?
I think I've written approximately a bajillion. I'm pretty sure that's the actual number. And it's something that I take seriously. It's something I try and do well at. It's weird because I'm really glad we're talking about this today, because it's not like you can take how to make good references class. It's something that's just one of those black arts that nobody ever tells you what's good. Nobody ever goes, oh, wait, that reference is written really poorly. How I do this, there's so much here. First, I'll just talk about how do I write these. I do references with 3 chunks, meaning sort of 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is just an intro of the person. It's pretty standardized. There's nothing exciting. It's just, this person's really great. And the last paragraph is just like a summary that says, this person's really great. But I do the middle paragraph to go, hey, look, I actually know this person. Here's like a little vignette, a little moment of reality with this person. I worked with this person all day Saturday in a Saturday class, and they did a really great job. Just some little story. And I've just come up with that 3-tiered structure over years. And also what I would recommend to you guys out there, if you ever get a good letter of reference, which you will, keep it, not just for yourself, but so you can rip it off when you have to write a letter of reference for somebody else later. So I collect letters of reference that were for me from years ago, and I don't rip them straight up, but I'll find a good sentence or two. I'll be like, oh, that's a good way of saying something positive about a person. Oh, that's a good little way of saying it. So I'm in a constant flux of making my letters better just from looking at other letters. So just in terms of the construction, before we even get into the meaning of it and do you need it or not, that's how I do those.
Andrew, when you do your letters of rec, do you do like the old school, like you put your details, your address, your name, phone contact thing, and then the person you're supposed to write the reference for? Or are you just dear whomever? Do you still do the old school letters of rec formatting, or have you modernized?
No, I get what you're asking. The answer is in between, because I think you still want to have that old school feel to it a little bit. Like for me, you make sure it's on like college stationery so it looks serious, and you have a little bit of that format. But in terms of my own information, I just put that at the end, a little bit more informal. I'll be like, if you need anything else, feel free to contact me at this phone number and this email. So I don't have that chunk at the top of all my information, like my address and all that stuff. So it's like improved for the modern era, but it's not doing away with the entire format. And another thing I'll say, don't make them too long. Like when you get letters because I've also gotten a ton of letters from students and stuff in terms of they're trying, or from prospective hires. I've read like tons of letters. If you have to write a letter for somebody, don't make it too long. Just make it like simple, like a simple 3-paragraph thing. Don't make sure the font is not too tiny, because sometimes I'll look at these letters of rec and I'm like, oh, Jesus, it's just this long ass thing that somebody just cut and pasted or now just AI'd together. I don't want to read this crap. Give me something short that shows that the person's good and shows that you really know the person.
Yep. Yeah. I think for archaeology, one of my first references was from you.
Yeah.
Andrew. Yeah. And I did that very same thing. I kept it, and I used your format to write the reference letters that I would write. And I've written quite a few.
Hilarious?
Yeah.
Right. I ripped it off. It's hilarious.
But it is, I think it's surprising to me. I've seen a lot of not good reference letters that are just like not helpful at all. I've had people that have asked me, can you write it for me? Oh, and then, and then I will tweak it. And it's so awkward. Like it's awkward for the student to do that. And the student doesn't know. They don't know many times they don't know what somebody is going to be looking for. And as a professor, that's part of your job, is to know what it is that the recipients of these letters are going to want to see. The student's not going to know that. Now, I understand definitely, hey, I have done this where somebody asked for me for a letter of reference and maybe I don't know everything. So I'll say, give me a list of the things that you've done, your classes, your extracurriculars, anything you think is important. And I usually will try to weave it in if it's relevant. And then, so that I will do, but I've had multiple people, I've heard multiple people asking, hey, just you write it. I'll tweak it a little bit for my own style and then send it off. It's lazy.
I never do that kind of stuff. I'm always like, I write it like it's my deal, 100%. Like I never give people a base letter that they can then change. I'm like, no, this is from the pen of Andrew Kinkella. You know what I mean? Right. Like you don't get to come in. So I'm always wary of that. Yeah, I've seen bad letters of rec from other professors, from other institutions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I've seen plenty.
It's so crazy.
Could you guys give so for the listeners, can you tell us what is a bad letter of rec? What does that look like, or probably looks like many different things, but can you give us some examples?
I got my best one. I got my this is my favorite one. And this was a letter for me that I asked for as a student, like an idiot, because I didn't know any better. But when you're getting a letter, you have to make sure to ask somebody who's a normal human. And sometimes in archaeology, you'll have like weirdos. Don't ask for letters from weirdos. Really? I know, it's good I'm here. But I got one from a weirdo right early on because I didn't know any better and I worked with them a bunch. And I was able to look at it after the fact and I totally understood why I didn't get into the institutions I sent it for, because they had done the world's best example of damning someone with faint praise. Damning was because they were jealous of me. I'm like, what? Yeah. You're like a professor. What the hell's wrong with you? But the whole letter was like, dear UCLA, Andrew Kinkella is a pretty good student. I've had better, but he's definitely pretty good. And most of the time, it was like that. It might not have been quite that extreme, but it read like that. Yep. It's good. God, you are so like spineless and worried and weak that you have to like downplay your own student instead of pushing them forward. Yeah. So I got one of those and I cherish it because I'm like, wow, because it's actually hard to damn someone with faint praise. It's like a skill. So you bring the reader in, but then you pull them back. So I got one of those.
It's easy for people that are
crazy.
Nice people. Yes. But I think for me, one example of poor reference I've seen where people send them to me, and this is something that's really important. You have a really good point here. For those that are students that are trying to go to graduate school, make sure that it's somebody that you feel confident enough that they're going to write you a really good letter. And then you tell them, may I please see the letter? So there's usually a check when they turn them in where they say allow the student to see the letter or don't allow them to see the letter. And if they don't want you to see the letter, you should not be wanting them as your reference. So you have to be bold enough to say, may I please see the letter before you send it off? And I think it's fair. Otherwise, you shouldn't be using them because why would you want to have a reference sent by somebody who is not willing to show you the letter that they're going to be writing on your behalf. So I would the other thing is save your time and you have to know, and this takes some extra effort that you've really gotten to know your professors. Yeah. If you haven't gone out of your way to get to know your professors, to number one, for them to feel comfortable writing you a positive reference, a really good positive reference, and number two, for them to actually know you, then you're in a tough spot. So your reference letters are created from the time you step in the door of that hallowed institution. You should be working on your relationships with your professors. And I know that's hard for some people because they get intimidated, but you want to establish, and it takes time. You can't do it like professors are a lot of professors are very pessimistic, like jaded people. They think they have a rough life. They think everybody's trying to take advantage of them.
You sure are.
And so they're like, and some of them are like vindictive, just like you were saying.
I know. So oh my God.
In order to really have a good relationship with somebody where you, first of all, know you feel confident they're going to write something great about you. And number two, they're going to feel comfortable writing something great about you. That starts from the beginning that you step into that institution. You got to be working.
So true. There's so much more about that. And one more thing I wanted to touch on just before we leave for the next segment is that in terms of showing the letter or not, what I do is I show my students like in person. I'll be like, look, you guys, here's the letter. It says a bunch of good stuff. You're all good. But then I check, can't see it. So because I don't know if this makes any difference, but I feel like when I send it to the institution and it says they didn't see it, then I'm saying all this good stuff like in secret. So it's like extra good. So anyway, that's what I do. But I don't know if that makes any difference.
As long as ultimately you get to see it. I think you're right. Yeah. I think that's good. All right, let's take it to the next segment. We'll be right back.
Hey, Prime members, are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
This is CRM Archaeology Podcast episode 314, and this is our segment 2. We're talking about references. As Doug said, not references you put at the end of a paper, but references that, you
job references.
Somebody's willing to write you a good reference. Doug.
Actually, it's about that. So you guys have been talking about good references, and Andrew, you let your people you write for references for, you show them that. Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever had to, I want to call it a bad reference, but I guess, I don't know, have you either written a bad reference or had that conversation where you're like, hey, I'm not the person you should be asking for a reference.
Yeah.
I don't want to stab you in the back. So I'll stab you in the chest right now and be like, I'm not going to write you a good reference. Don't ask me. Have you guys had those conversations? How'd they go? Or have you written a bad, I don't know, like it's bad for the person. The reference bad for the person. It's not necessarily like a quote unquote bad reference because it's not in the sense that what we were talking about earlier. Oh, they used ChatGPT and they said the wrong things, or it was a bad reference in that way. So I don't know. I guess a negative reference. We want to call it a negative reference. Have you guys had to have that conversation or had to give a negative reference?
Yes to all. And I love your metaphor, Doug, of stabbing them in the back or in the chest. Although I will give myself a little credit to say I have enough spine to stab them in the chest. And I will say it happens rarely. So the huge percentage, and again, it's funny coming up with this topic. I haven't really thought of it, but I'm like, good God, man, I think I've literally written hundreds of letters of recommendation. Like I've done a ton of these. And so just percentage game wise, you're going to get people coming to you who are just not good, but it's rare. But so what'll happen when this does happen is a student will come to me and go, hey, Kinkella, can I get a letter of recommendation? And I will say, because it's happened enough times where I'm ready for this, where I'm like, look, I can write one for you, but it's not going to be very strong. I highly suggest you get one from this person or this person. You know what I mean? So I just ease them into this idea that I can't write them a strong one. And what I'll say is about half the time they go, oh, okay, that's cool. Because a lot of times students, they just don't really know. They don't really know how letters of rec really work. But yeah, and one thing they don't know is it's if you get a D in my class, I'm not going to be your world's best letter of rec. So I just give them pointers on where else they could go. The other half the time, though, I've gotten this. They're like, I don't care. I just need a letter of rec for this thing. I don't care. Just do it. I'm like, are you sure? Because this is just going to be like real basic. Yes, this person does breathe air and is able to walk on two legs. And they're like, I don't care. And I'll even make a joke like that. And they're like, I don't care. So I have written, they're not negative, but it's just very basic. And in this top secret code of reading letters of rec, it obviously says this person isn't that great. So that's how I play that.
The top secret rec coding. Can you give us a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Oh, you want to delve into the top secret world? I may be assassinated after I tell everyone this because big archaeology will come to destroy me. But I don't think I've never gotten a letter from anyone who says, this person sucks, beware, go away. It's not like that. It'll just be very cold. Like a good letter will be like, Jane is an amazing student. She's one of the best I've had. In particular, I worked with her in the Saturday class. It was all day. She was always prepared. In fact, her paperwork was killer. Like, it'll be full of really super positive specifics. That's top secret world good, right? Like super positive specifics. Top secret world bad is just flat. Jane is a fine student. She did turn in her project on time. She did make it to the end of the semester. I don't know, but you get what I mean. It's not like cruel. It's just like there's not much here.
Bare minimum.
And it'll probably be physically very short, the letter itself, like real short, like a paragraph. There you go.
And did you, so this sort of brings us back to the paper I was talking about where we did advice. It was actually around the legal advice of what you can and cannot say.
Right.
And this is in the UK for a letter of reference. I'm guessing, Andrew, I'm guessing this is probably true of most archaeology, unless you have a company that has like the HR sat you down and been like, hey, before you write that letter of rec, let me scare the shit out of you real quick. I'm guessing, Andrew, you've never had that, because like a lot of things in archaeology or academia, it's just, as you're talking about, you see a good letter, you rip it off, you learn through doing, but there's no one's ever sat you down. I'm guessing the university's never sat you down and been like, hey, do you want to not sleep for the next couple of days about those hundreds of letters that you've written in the past, sort of thing? I'm guessing that's never happened.
No. And I don't know anybody else who it has, honestly.
Yeah. So I'll do the UK first on the legal bit, and I'm going to pass it off to Heather, who's done the research on like the US legal bit. But it is like the paper we were writing, a big trend now, especially for big organizations that, and when I say big, I'm literally just saying you have HR, and that's their job. Like, you have a person or a department that actually does like HR and checks the legal bits and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of organizations that could be a couple hundred archaeologists and not have that support. So it's a bit, it doesn't necessarily have to be by size. An organization that usually has that, you could tell, because what they do now in the UK is they basically give what they call a basic or a standard reference, which is they just write back and they say, hey, we only provide their date of employment and their title.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the reason you're doing that is because there's been it's not court cases. So over here you get a semi-legal thing called the labor board. So you do just disputes through that. It's not quite the full court, but they can like give out fines and award money and stuff like that. And there is legal backing behind it, but it's a lower level, so you don't have to like go to a full-on judge and take up an entire court session for something that could be used for like murder or something like that. So there's been a couple of cases, and a lot of it comes down to is, so in the UK, you can give what we could call a negative reference. But you have to be real careful, because in any letter of reference, even if it's positive, you cannot disclose any protected characteristic. So that's something like a disability, your marriage status, if you've been pregnant, your religion. There's a whole list. It can actually be quite tricky, because you might say like something in your letter, oh yeah, no, they were a great worker. Unfortunately, we had to let them go because they were on medical leave too often. And if that medical leave was because they had a disability, you've just given away one of their protected characteristics. And basically, if that potential employer then did not hire them because of your letter, they can basically sue both that potential employer and yourself for discrimination, discriminating. It's a protected characteristic. So and that's like the advice that we gave out was basically like, hey, that's the thing, is like any advice you give is like a level of risk. There's very few things that are black and white. There's things like, hey, this is the thing you can do that has the least amount of risk. And these are things like giving a letter of reference probably has a little bit of risk. It's up to you. There's some pros and cons, but any organization, any HR person's basically going to tell you, they're never going to say, oh, yeah, choose the riskier option. They're never going to do that. So it's sort of becoming the default over here in the UK, where just to basically get rid of that risk. And if you ever ask for advice, like HR advice, they're 99 out of 100 times it's going to be like, yeah, this is your least risky option, and we're not going to tell you any other advice that's going to be a bit more risky. Basically here you can write, and it could be even a positive reference. You just have to make sure you're not disclosing some protected characteristic. And it's a bit tough because you don't know what the person you're writing the reference to is going to react. So if you say something negative or accidentally disclose a disability or their religion or any other protected characteristic, and they do something crazy, not hire that person or discriminate them or write them a nasty letter, racist letter or something like that, then suddenly you're on the hook even though you didn't do any of that. Yeah, that's the legal setup here.
And that's why I never listen to bureaucratic tools in HR. Mm-hmm. Like at some point, I've come to this recently in life. I'm like, I'm old enough, I'm wise enough, I'm just going to live my life. I'm not going to listen to that bullshit. I'm going to write a good letter or a bad letter, and obviously it's almost always good, and I'm going to do it in good faith. I'm doing this in good faith. And if somebody wants to sue me, then fucking do it. Like I am not going to live my life afraid of that bullshit. If that makes sense. You can hear in my voice, it gets me on edge because I'm so sick of the over litigating horse shit. Like what a waste of everyone's time. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to, again, I get your point. I'm glad you brought it up because it's awful yet fascinating. It's awful fascinating, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because I also know that people trust me. You form trust over years. So they don't want me to just give somebody's name and their serial number. They look to me for a real breakdown of this person's character. You know what I mean? And actually on the flip side too, one thing that freaks me out is not this like HR bullshit, which I can't stand that kind of crap. It's if the person I gave a good letter to ends up screwing up and making me look bad. I hate that. Luckily, my percentage rate's been very good, but the once or twice or three times in my career where I've had students who I thought would do well, who really ate it, I hate the flip side. That part is really difficult. Anyway, that's how I feel about that. Heather, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I am, though, limited by if my company says I can't do something and that's part of it, then that's different. But I do think there's a difference between somebody asking for a letter of recommendation and a potential employer doing a background check or just basically doing a background check or wanting to have some more insight on somebody. There's a difference between that and actual letter of reference. And I've worked for companies that it said, what Doug was saying, we are only going to give this information. That's it. And usually those phone calls will come in. So there's a difference between somebody calling to check employment to make sure that what the person puts on their application is correct, and somebody who actually puts in a personal reference. So I've had somebody ask for me to be the personal reference. And this is actually not that I did it for this reason. I'd like to say I was smart enough to do it for this reason, but showing people the letter ahead of time and having them that letter actually it gives you, they can't say, oh, they shouldn't have, you'd have to have it in writing, or you give it to them in an email form and they know ahead of time what you're going to be sending. Now they can't say, they couldn't sue you on that. I'd be very surprised that they'd be able to. That's some good evidence that they knew what was going out. And then I do get phone calls. I've gotten phone calls from people that have asked me just to verify. That I don't usually get them because I work for companies that are large enough to have their own HR department. And so they don't
verify that they worked there or something.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. But if I say I'm going to be a personal reference, then I do give more information because I agreed to be their reference and I'm proud to be their good reference. Yeah. But I am pretty careful. I've never, even though I've had some instances where I've had very poor hire, That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Yeah.
I've not told somebody that called checking on the person. I did not tell them, just because, first of all, this person loves to litigate and it wasn't worth it. I was like, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to go through what I just went through, because I'm not going to delve into that. Yeah. But as far as what is, boy, you know what? I think we should go on to the next segment.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
It's going to take a little bit for me to talk about the U.S. side of things. So we'll be right back.
I thought this was just references.
Welcome back to CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 314. We're talking about references, work references. And Doug was just giving us what he had compiled together, a summary of what he compiled together for the UK. And so I'm tasked with talking about the US. And it's so funny because I had this in my head, and I don't know if it was from before or I was given misinformation or whatever, but I always thought that in the US, former employers are not allowed to divulge any employment information. And all they could do was verify that you worked there and the dates that you worked there. They couldn't say that you were terminated or the reason for termination. They couldn't say anything. And I actually found out that's wrong. But it does. The same thing is that people do not want to be put into former employers just to be on the safe side. They will instruct, or at least their HR department will instruct their staff to not divulge anything. And sometimes it's because, let's say somebody's been terminated, but it actually wasn't a really good termination. We're in an at-will state. You can terminate here for any reason, except for discrimination purposes, obviously. And so, but people are so litigious. It's like Doug was saying, HR departments are just going to be on the conservative side and just not divulge these things, which really doesn't do the references. They're not very helpful, except for the fact that at least you can find out if the person is saying they worked there and they didn't. That is a good thing. But I think it's just because they don't want people to make a stupid mistake. I think there are some people that could give a really good reference and they could give good information to the potential employer. But there's enough dum-dums out there that could get the companies in trouble. And so they just don't do it. Now, every state's different. And as I was doing some digging, I really thought that California was really protective of the employer or employee. And in fact, there's a lot that California's allowed to say. They can talk, they can say that you were fired. They can say for what reason. They can give talk about your performance. So even though maybe you weren't let go or you weren't fired, if you had poor performance or average performance, they can share those things. Again, they may not, although if you have a smaller company, they may not be as savvy and they may actually answer, honestly. As I was looking through doing this research, I realized, or I came across a few articles where they had suggestions for employees that are leaving and whether or not they get personal references, or knowing when you leave a company, or if you've even been terminated or laid off, that there are some states where they are required to give you a letter if you request it about why you were let go and what it is that they're going to say when a future potential employer calls them. And so they have to follow that and you have to get it in writing. But even if you don't live or you're not working in a state that has that requirement, it's not a bad thing to ask. It might be an awkward question. Maybe you're going to find out something you don't want to know, but it would be good to know whether you left or you were terminated for whatever reason, how that company will communicate your work history with them. The reason that's important, because even if it's negative, it's something at least you are better off if you know the information and you can deal with it during an interview. So let's say you're having an interview and the future employer, potential employer, asks you some questions. Say, is there anything you want to share with me about a previous employment that might be helpful for me to understand either how you dealt with a difficult situation, or this is a time for you to package it in a way that makes you look the least negative possible. So let's say you were terminated from your job, and actually it was a valid termination. And this would be an opportunity for you to say, I learned something from this. This is what I learned. And this is why I'm a better employee. And this is why I won't make that mistake again. So there's two things that are important to understand. Number one, you really should know how your company, what their policy is with sharing information about your work history, exactly what they're going to say about you so that you can defend it, or not defend it, but explain it. Your sense of how things went, not from a kind of a gray area, but exactly what happened, whether or not you were terminated or let go. There's a difference between let go and being fired, and all those things. They do need to match. If they don't match, and let's say you have a very large candidate pool, they're just going to throw you out immediately. You're not going to get the job. You're not going to even get an opportunity maybe for an interview. You want to make sure that everything matches. The second thing is to understand is that in the US, you can be fired, and not all companies do this, but you can be fired if you give incorrect information and it's found out even years down the road. It could be a reason for firing. Just make sure, just because you get through the hiring process, you're not like free and clear. It's better to be honest during the hiring process and just let it all out and give yourself an opportunity to control the narrative.
So actually segues in for something I'd forgotten to mention as well. So in the UK, you can give references that includes performance review and opinions. You could say, not opinions. You could put in things like basically you have to stick to facts. It has to be provable facts. So there's a reason why like a lot of organizations will do annual performance reviews. And it seems like a pointless checkboxing thing in most cases, and people are like, oh yeah, your performance is great, blah, blah, blah. Performance reviews are mainly used for legal aspects to force people out or firing or stuff like that, but it also comes into the references. So in the UK, if you're giving a reference, you have to be able to back it up with facts. So you can't just be vague and say, oh, they can be late. Okay, was that one time? Was it 10 times? How late were they? You'd have to be able to put like a fact like, over a 6 month period, they were late 15 minutes twice. And you basically, that's the sort of level you have to do. So you can't put in sort of opinions, you can only put in facts. And those facts have to be verifiable or provable. If your organization doesn't do sort of performance reviews, or there's no paperwork about things like, oh, absences or them being late, like they've never been written up on it, you can't say anything. So if they've gone through and they've been late a couple of times, but you never put it on their record, you never gave like a verbal warning, you can't put that in a reference letter, because basically you can't prove it. And if they ever took you to the labor board, they'd be like, I have no record. There's no record of me being late. You basically are lying, and then you'll lose because you can't prove it. So yeah, similar sort of setup, a bit of what Heather was talking about. In the UK, if you are going to give anything that might be considered negative, you have to be able to back it up and make sure you have some sort of form of evidence and be as precise as possible so it's not misinterpreted. And again, it's that sort of risk where you're sending this off and you don't know who the person who's going to be receiving the reference. You might write a quite really quick reference. You're like, yeah, great. They're normally on time. You say something like that, which means you're like, yeah, I think they're on time like every time. But then the person you've sent it to is, ooh, normally on time. Ooh, how do I judge that? Do they have problems with being on time? Do I want to hire them? And you run that risk. But I guess sort of a question for you guys, because you guys have probably both been on the other receiving end of references. What are you guys' opinions on like receiving references, and do you find them valuable? I have some very strong feelings on them, but I'll wait and listen to Heather and Andrew, what you guys.
I'll say my experience, like I used to be called at my former employer, and I'm only saying this because it's a good answer to this question. They used to call me the Oracle because I could wade through the BS of an interview and I knew that whether the person was going to be a good hire or not. And a lot of time, and how did we find this out? We found this out because they would hire people and I would say you shouldn't, and they would do it anyway. And then exactly what I said was going to happen happened. And a lot of times people like to go by the references. And if these are references that people have given you as their personal references, of course they're good. Of course, and you have no idea why and what kind of relationship they had. I don't put a whole lot of stake in those personal references. But I do consider them and I'll look at, but I'll really think critically about why this person is giving them a good reference. And I might actually then also call them. So sometimes the references actually come with a letter. Sometimes they don't come with a letter. And so you call them. So then I'm listening for the BS. I got my BS meter on and I'll ask specific questions because I really want to know what's backing up this good reference. Like, why do you feel this way about this person? So I'm asking those questions. And it's very much what Andrew was saying is when you're reading a reference, like if the person's not trying to give you that message, you can read it. If you are a critical thinker and you can read people fairly well, you can tell if the person there's another reason why they're just giving a good reference. Either they're just a nice person and they're just trying to be a good guy, or because they're a friend and they're doing their friend a solid, that kind of thing. Or was this person really amazing? So when people leave, there's so many different reasons why people leave, but generally if they're happy and they're getting paid fair enough, people are not going to leave unless they get like this opportunity that they would not otherwise get. So I'm trying to figure out, to me, these references aren't always all that valid.
I would say it a bit different. I agree with you like 93% of that. I would just say, I think a world with references is better than a world without. What I would say is references just provide you another data point, if that makes sense. It's one more data point. And I totally agree with what Heather is saying. It's like, it gives you and the data point can be good or bad. And a lot of times has little to do with what the reference is actually saying. It's like, who's the reference? Where's this from? How old is it? What's the structure of this reference? Is it just BS because there's way too many words here? Again, it's that secret. You can be a reference whisperer.
How long ago did they? Yeah. How long ago did they work with them?
Right.
Like,
this is 12 years ago.
Yeah, if you're going after, let's say, a practice director position, and this person hasn't worked with the candidate since they were like a field director, right? That's completely different. So even if the person was a great field director, they haven't seen that person in this type of situation that they're applying for.
Yeah. So again, it's a data point. That's why you're like, oh, okay, it gives me this data. It's not, I've never just opened someone's like packet and looked at one evaluation letter and been like, they're it. This evaluation letter is amazing. It's not like that. Again, it's just a data point. I was going to say something else about that. I've totally forgotten. Forgotten. So at the end of the podcast, I've destroyed everything by forgetting.
I think to me, and this has nothing to do with references. I'll save.
Please do.
With your references, but I do think that it is obviously related. Is to me the interview and the interviews, multiple interviews, are really the most important aspect of the hiring process.
Of course, yeah.
And you need to have multiple. To me, I want multiple interviews. It just depends on the level of the role that you're hiring. But at a more senior level, I absolutely have to meet the person a candidate in person. So maybe the initial interview could be remote, but I absolutely have to meet them in person. And that is because I've been bitten before where I didn't do that. And I was very sorry I didn't do it. I really would have been able to see things if I'd met them in person. And then, the other thing is, having people involved in the interview that they might be supervising or having some kind of supervisory role with, and seeing how they deal with somebody other than me that's hiring them. I want to see how they act with them.
Yep. I agree with you 110%. And also, I remember what I forgot just back. So first, I totally agree with you. In person is critical. It's like I'll have people who want professor jobs or whatever, and they're like, oh, I need to zoom in. I'm like, you ain't getting this job. I need to see you in person. If you're taking this seriously, you fly in. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not going to do some Zoom thing. No, sorry. And then the other thing I was going to say, this is small, but I tell my students once in a long while to want a letter of rec for somebody who I know hates me. So I'm like, don't use me. Don't use me on this. As soon as they see my name, they're going to give you a no. You know what I mean? So that's just a small side bit that some people are not open-minded, and their own like disdain for the letter writer might like bleed over into the job prospect.
So my strong feelings are actually probably close to a bit to you guys on the it's only one data point, but
yeah,
I'm fairly on the I don't believe in references.
Wow.
Yeah, because it comes down to, so like some of the things we've been talking about, like when you were talking about, Andrew, like the secret language and stuff.
Yes.
But like at a certain level, like you don't, when you're asking someone for a reference, especially when you're starting out, like a student's not going to know what a good reference or a bad reference looks like. So you're basically
time to learn.
Yeah, but then there's not a lot of options for jobs out there in archaeology. So you're learning with someone could actually just be really bad at writing a reference. Like they think they're doing a good reference, and then you might be reading into, ooh, they said they're okay, and that might be because the person who's writing the reference just is not great at writing references.
No. See, if you're a good employer through that stuff, like I've seen that before, where this letter of reference is written really poorly, but I can tell this person doesn't really know how to do it. It's no big deal. And the other thing I would say for students is it's understood that their letters at first are not like super perfect. That's okay. You're 22 or whatever. It's all right. You're getting into it. So I would say you don't have to worry about some of that.
But I don't know. There's a lot that can go wrong there, and sometimes it's one of those ones where I feel like it's forcing a lot of extra hoops for not adding a lot of extra data in that point. In the sense that, like, all right, so I get a letter, and if I don't know who's it from, I'll be like, I have no idea if this is actually a good letter, if this person knows what they're talking about, or anything like that. And then it prejudices if it's someone I do know, because I'm like, oh, I know there's a good letter of reference. But then, you have two candidates, and you're like, this one had a good letter of reference, and this one, maybe it's a good letter of reference. So it really devalues, because you basically have to almost have two letters of reference from the same person, same referee, to be like, oh, I could tell the difference. I don't know. It feels like you're forcing a lot of people to do a bunch of extra work.
That's okay.
When you're not going to It's
a cutthroat world. It is a cutthroat world. If they can't do it, someone else can. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to tell my students and have my students learn. Look, nobody cares about your sob story. Get it together and live and learn. Like earlier here, I talked about my shitty letter reference I got. It was a live and learn experience. It didn't destroy my career, but it made stuff a bit worse, but that's okay. That's life. We're splitting hairs here on this one, but I just think the data point is a little more worthy than you do, I think.
Yeah, I think we disagree on the value of the data point. Yeah. I think that's good for us to probably end this episode.
I do.
Don't you think, Heather? End this?
I would say, just on the note of whether or not they're valid, I think that as a candidate, you should always consider them valid and do everything you can to make sure that you have the best references possible if you're required to have them. Put thought into it, because you don't know. You may end up with an employer that they put everything on the reference. I understand what Doug is saying, but don't count.
How dare you understand what Doug is saying?
Heather's making a really good point here, because my thing was, as a prospective employer, I don't put any value, but definitely, if you're employee, you have no idea
Yep.
what they're going to do. They might that might sink it. Like it might come down to there's 3 candidates and they're like, guys, we're pulling out the letter of Rex. So make sure you have
oh, right.
Exactly.
these you don't know. Yeah.
It could be the tiebreaker. So you just don't know. So put everything that you can into your references. Just make sure that every single thing, when you're going for any kind of job you're applying to, just make sure that every aspect of your application is rock solid. And it's really easy not to do that because it's a lot of work to every single thing, to be customizing your approach to every single job. You have to do it, or if you're having a hard time, especially if you don't have a job and you're really trying to get a job, you got to put some thought into every single one, because they're looking at you like, they're not saying, oh, they must be applying to 20 different positions. They're looking at you for their position. And so you got to put that extra effort in. It's worth it in the long run.
Yeah.
So,
I will say, I want to say one.
I know we've gone.
I know.
Okay.
I got one tiny thing just to say. In reality, I've never seen a letter of recommendation make a huge difference near the end. Somebody would have gotten the job, but their third letter of recommendation sunk them. I haven't seen that. Maybe very early in the hiring process, but usually no. So I don't want to have people overly freak out about letter of recommendation not being perfect or something.
Yeah.
We're way over time, but I was also going to say, sometimes a lot of people put on their resume or CV references upon request, or they want to ask for actual letter. They just ask for the contact details of your references, just to say, guys, make sure you let your referees.
Yes,
that's a good
I was
one.
just going to say that. Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing random call.
That totally happened to me. I was like, I don't know. I was like, oh yes. They were decent, as I was rapidly trying to remember who they were even talking about. Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, definitely make sure that that's a really good point, because I think we've all been in that position where they called and you didn't know. And the thing is that it's the employer or the potential employers looking at this going, you don't remember them, that they weren't that memorable. But in actuality, you're just being thrown off guard, and you deal with a lot of people. So you're not quite, you need a second to get your head together to make sure. But in the meantime, it doesn't look good. Yeah, definitely let your references know that they may be getting a call.
Yeah.
I think this was a good one. Please look back, and there's some really good nuggets in these different segments as far as how to make sure that you're preparing yourself. I think there's a lot of people out there that just throw whatever at the wall and hope something sticks. That's usually not a good strategy when it comes to trying to look for a job. You got to put in that extra effort, and that includes your references. So, well, with that, thanks everybody for joining. And thank you to my co-hosts, Andrew and Doug, for putting on a good podcast. And we'll see you in the field.
Goodbye.
See you guys next time.
That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.arcpodnet.com/CRMArcPodcast. Please comment and share anywhere you see the show. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website, or just email chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Support the show and the network at arcpodnet.com/members. Get some swag and extra content while you're there. Send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Culturo Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.